Hey guys, it's Monday. That means it's time for another Halo Q&A. So for those of you who are just joining us, the rules are actually pretty simple. All you have to do is leave your Halo related or personal questions in the comment section below, and they may show up on next week's show. So we're going to kick this week off with a question from Critical Hit, who says, Q&A, this is a long shot, but what are your thoughts on making a campaign redo? I think they owe us a better campaign. They misled us with the story and the content. My biggest problem is that it feels incomplete. It looks as if 343 was not reaching the deadline and had to cut many blue team missions. A campaign redo has been bugging me for a while now. They would either take the route to completely redo the plot, characterization, etc., but that would probably take too many resources, or they could complete more Master Chief missions. I'm just very disappointed with how the campaign went, and I feel we need more. Your thoughts? So, Critical Hit, you do bring up some good points. I ultimately am not very satisfied with the Halo 5 campaign. Halo 5 was a game I was waiting for years, and Halo 4, say what you will about the level design or whatever. I know some people think it's too linear and stuff, and I do think it's one of the more linear Halo games, but it's still replayable, and the story is still there to just be explored and dissected, and there's lots to talk about. And with the Halo 5 campaign, I beat it overnight, and that was it. In fact, there's not really much to talk about except for trying to clear up bad writing that some people, didn't understand, or just really talking about what went wrong with the writing and how it could improve. Overall, the campaign was very dissatisfying for me, and I felt like I was waiting years for this. And so, sadly though, I do not think a campaign redo would really do anybody good. I think it would be very embarrassing from a PR standpoint, for like 343's public image and Microsoft's. I also think it would just be kind of like a waste of everyone's time, because ultimately, you know what the end result's going to be. Cortana's going to become a god and whatever. So it's like going through the motions in more detail, it's not really going to help anything, because ultimately the problem is still here. So all we can do really is look forward to the future. And sadly, something that not a lot of people understand when it comes to marketing is 343 did not do the marketing for the campaign. In fact, that's how it's been for the entire series of Halo. If you guys actually remember, with Halo 3, there was that mural. Do you remember? Or not mural, but there were all those action figures and stuff. Do you kind of remember how there was like the Brute holding up a dead chief, and then that chief looks at the camera, and people were like, oh my god, like, is Chief gonna die at the end? Like, and then I think of also with the Halo 4, do you guys remember the scanned trailer where the Didact was holding the Master Chief prisoner and he was like scanning him and stuff? None of that ever happened in the game. Microsoft has a marketing team that basically goes to 343 and they're like, alright guys, what's going on with the story? 343 is like, okay, this is what it's like, and then the marketing team tries to blow it out of proportion and exaggerate certain plot points. Like, they're trying to sell you the game. So they'll take something, like, as simple as maybe there's a line where Chief's like, oh, my leg hurts, and then they'll make a trailer like, Chief loses his leg in a grenade explosion. Something like, they're trying to sell you the game ultimately, and from what I've heard, actually, 343 was not happy with Microsoft during the marketing for Halo 5 because Microsoft was not telling the truth with the story of Halo 5, and it's a thing a lot of people don't know about marketing in video games. So hopefully with Halo 6, the marketing team and 343 work together a little bit more, like Microsoft cools their jets after the backlash from Halo 5's campaign, but I don't know. Those are just my thoughts. So we're going to move on to T-Man to Demax. Yeah, T-Man to Demax, who says, Q&A, what do you think of the animations of the Pelicans and Phantoms and Spirits in Halo 5? Something about them has always seemed so off and unpolished. Bungie did a great job of animating them in their games to look realistic and have flight characteristics that would actually match their design. The Pelicans were very wobbly and didn't have the best maneuverability at high speeds, but could go fast, whereas the Phantom was slower, but could hover and had a nice floaty animation like it had anti-gravity propulsion. In contrast, the Halo 5 Pelicans fly perfectly with no imperfections and can stop and maneuver on a dime. Also, both the Pelican and the Phantom don't really hover. They just kind of stay static in place until they fly off, and it looks so fake. This was apparent in the Firefight beta, as you saw a lot of dropships. I feel like this could have just been a time constraint thing, as polishing flight animations wasn't priority number 1, or 343 just doesn't have the most talented animators. So, to answer your questions, I think 343 has very talented animators. I think the animations for Halo 4 and 5 are beautiful, you know, aside from a few wonky looking ones. Like, I think of the Marines walk animation. Like, the Marines in Halo 4 and 5 look like they're trying to hobble to the bathroom, like they shat their pants. They've got that weird squat walk going on. But what I think the problem with Halo 5 is you've got to remember, animation frames are going to be cut from a distance, and that goes for vehicles as well. Like, if you actually go into theater and you get up close and personal with certain enemies, they have very detailed animations, like the knights and stuff. Sometimes you can see their little hands twitch, or they might like grab their face if they get shot. You know, their little hands will grab their face in pain. You know, you'll see the knights kind of like twitching and stuff. You'll even sometimes see them, if they hear somebody outside, they'll hesitate, like they raise their foot, like they're about to go look out the window, but then they'll just decide to stand there and they'll put their foot back down. Like, overall, the animation quality is solid, but the problem is Halo 5's engine renders things with less frames at a distance because they want to keep, you know, the highest resolution possible as well as 60 frames per second. So animations will not look as impressive as they should, and that's a sad reality of the Halo 5 engine. Like, the Phantoms, overall, I think they look okay. Now, something also to keep in mind, guys, is Bungie, for the most part, they scripted their Phantoms. Like, their Phantoms flew in a very scripted pattern and stuff. I believe it wasn't until Halo Reach. It was either Halo ODST or Reach when Phantoms actually got their own AI, like Phantoms and Pelicans and so on, until they actually got their own flight AI. Because beforehand, it was all scripted. They would go to predetermined locations where, with Halo 4 and 5, they continued that, where everything is done by an AI and stuff, so maybe that's why it looks a little bit more jerky and less, like, stylized and fluid. I don't know. But I hope that that answers up a few possible discussions, but we're going to move on to Alan Mitchell, who says, Halo Q&A. Hey, really like your channel. You do great work, and I like to see you keep it up. Whoa, now that that is out of the way, I'll ask a few questions. How do you feel about the Cliff, the Halo 5 story? Oh, okay. How do you feel about the cliff the Halo 5 story was left on? With Cortana now poising as a galactic-wide threat, the Infinity is on the run, and Chief is reunited with Halsey after nearly a decade, even if 343 got rid of Brian Reed and built a new team of great writers. Does the questions given at the end of Halo 5 pique your interest in finding the answers to the next game? I often hear you voicing your opinions on 343's art style, and my perspective varies a bit from yours respectively. But I do see what you are saying when you see Halo 4 with a more realistic and grittier art style than Halo 5, where it was colored up a bit. Between 4 and 5, I see it as a reverse of Halo 3 and Reach. For Halo 1 through 3, it was always colorful and bright. Reach was honestly the first time it felt gritty and realistic in the art style, with the Spartan armor looking worn and scratched and the maps showing the scorch marks and creators of a world being invaded by the Covenant. Despite how bright Halo 5 looks, I feel like it not only feels and looks like Halo, but it reflects the day and age it's taking place in. After all, technically all the multiplayer is simply wargame simulations on the Infinity. It should be no surprise that things appear very clean and pristine. Being a huge fan of Big Team Battle and now Warzone, I can only imagine what the next level of it could potentially be like in the next game. Could you imagine a Halo with the realism and scale of a Battlefield title, with massive 64-player maps and battles, players being able to actually fly Pelican drop ships to carry other players and vehicles like tanks and Warthogs to the front lines, or even being able to kill in airstrikes like in Firefight from Reach, or with maps so large that a Scarab can come in and be a Warzone boss to kill. I feel like I could go on for hours about Halo stuff, far too much to be said in just a comment. I know you're a busy guy, but I would love to actually talk to you one-on-one about Halo sometime. Hope you have a great weekend and looking forward to your next video. So if you guys ever want to talk to me one-on-one, in the description below are my Gamertag, my Facebook, my Twitter, my Twitch, and you guys are free to message me there, and I do actually talk to people. I like talking to you guys and engaging a little bit. And so, to answer your questions about the story, I'm not too happy with the cliffhanger, just because overall the Halo 5 story wasn't that good anyway. It didn't feel finished. It felt very rushed. It felt very incomplete. It's barely a story. Like, if you read a checklist of what a story requires, it barely meets that mark. And so the cliffhanger felt more like an insult to me personally. I was actually pretty angry when the credits began rolling, because, you know, unlike Halo 2, which still told a story, you know, with character arcs and stuff, Halo 2 was more of a tale of Arbiter overcoming his inner zealot and learning the truth about the Covenant. You know, it was about the breaking of the Covenant. Where Halo 5, there was nothing like that. There was no inner kind of plot going along inside of this huge overarching plot of Cortana taking over the galaxy. So Halo 5 just ultimately, it felt like a slap in the face to me. And with Halo 6, I do think Brian Reed knows he messed up. I think he knows he messed up very badly. He actually left social media due to hatred from the community and stuff, and after realizing this, in fact, actually, someone told me his last tweet before he closed down his Twitter was actually pretty depressing. Basically, he said he needed to think about a few things, and, you know, so on, and I feel incredibly bad now, because Brian Reed, you know, I don't think he's really proven himself very much with the Halo series and just writing in general. I don't think he's really ever written anything remarkable, but that being said, something I do also need to acknowledge is he's never really been in the lead writer chair before. He's always just kind of written offshoot stuff, you know, like throwaway stuff, like Halo Escalation. I hardly think 343, you know, wanted it to be this impressive, groundbreaking comic. You know, it was more of just like filler trash to waste our time until Halo 5 comes out. So, you know, and same with Spartan Ops, it was more of just really a side story. You know, Halo 4 was about the main campaign, and so Brian Reed, I feel like he's never really had an opportunity to shine as well, and that's something that I'm starting to realize, and I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic about Halo 6. I'm going to give him a chance. I'm going to look forward to it, because, you know what, if 343 does learn anything, or, like, does, you know, do anything right, it's that they do learn. With the Halo 4 multiplayer, we didn't like it, and look at Halo 5's, it's great now. The balancing is there, everything's there, and sadly, they took a few steps back with the campaign, but I have faith, ultimately, at the end of the day. I think I have faith with Brian Reed, so I don't know, let's see how Halo 6 turns out. But to go into the art style discussions, personally, I actually don't really like the art style of 4 and 5, and in fact, during the beta of Halo 5, I was actually pretty impressed. I really liked what they were going for. It was starting to look more like Halo 3, because I noticed that you said Halos 1 through 3 were more colorful, and this is where I've actually got to disagree with you. If you actually remember, Halo 2 and definitely 3 were very gritty and dirty games. You know, Halo 2, I'm thinking of, like, the muddy Halo installation and stuff. Like, it wasn't bright and colorful like Combat Evolved. It was raining, it was very dark, it was very dreary. And then I think of New Mombasa and stuff, and how just dusty and dry it felt. And then 3, you know, you think of how muddy 3 was when you're fighting on the fields of Africa, you know, your warthog kicking up mud and dust into the air. Like, Halo has always had a very gritty art style, and it wasn't until Halo 4 when things began to get very clean looking, very pristine, very shiny. You know, 343 turned the bloom all the way up, and the beta I actually thought was kind of like, oh, I'm getting into this, it's a return to form. Sadly, people didn't like the beta for some reason, because it was so realistically lit and stuff. So the final game, they went back to the more cartoony art style of Halo 4. And sadly, Halo 5 just suffers because of it. Halo 4 feels very much like a patchwork game from an art style standpoint. Certain parts of it look really good, and other parts look really bad. Like, I think of Apex 7 in Warzone. That legit looks bad. I mean, the art style you can see is there, but the colors being used, the visuals, the technology used to, like, render the map and stuff, like, overall, just bad shading and use of colors across the board, and it's a disappointment to see Halo 5 be so, like, scattered in terms of a cohesive art style, and I think a lot of it has to do with kind of backlash from the community from the beta. They're like, we don't like it, we can't see, shadows are too dark and realistic, and so they were like, oh shit, they don't like this art style. So literally within the year leading up to release, they had a massive art style overhaul, and I think it's pretty apparent. You know, some things look really good, some things don't. Like, it's in the middle of transitioning art styles. So I hope that answers your questions, dude. So we're going to move on to I Know a Skirl, who says, Q&A, I like the art style of Halo 5's enemy lines and Swords of Sanghelios, but I often think that the temples and structures from those levels would work great if they merged with those vertical style maps with the design of the original levels such as 343 Guilty Spark and Assault on the Control Room. Would it work? Sanghelios-like temples covered in Halo CEA, swamp lights and swinging vines and flying glowworms. The map could have lower locations with swamp water and lily pads and high up locations in the canopy or possibly even above it. And a snow version as well with stone temples covered with icicles and deep snow. Especially now Halo 6 might be on a Halo ring. Your thoughts? Something else is that the Halo games... Oh my gosh, I just had like a stroke. I forgot how to talk for a second. Something else the Halo games are missing. If you picture any Halo CE/Halo 2 missions, Assault in the Control Room for instance, you would have wide open areas like under the bridge, but then you would have a few corridor-like areas when walking through structures, and Bungie did a really good job of not making Halo feel linear, and they gave it an epic scope feel. Thoughts? So let's go with your thing about the art styles and stuff. I think that would actually be cool. As I was reading your comment, I was kind of visualizing, like, picture the huge statues of Sangheli warriors, but just covered in, like, hanging moss and vines, and, you know, overall wet and muddy and stuff as the rain falls from the trees above. It would be really cool looking, and seeing them illuminated by, like, the, I think of fireflies and stuff flying around, like, that would be freaking awesome, and same with snow temples. And to the lore junkies, I'm asking you guys, as far as I know, Sanghelios is a very desert-like planet. Does Sanghelios have, like, ice caps and stuff where there could be temples buried under the snow, or even jungles where we could see some temples in, like, temples and ruins in the thickets and stuff? I don't know. Tell me down below, any of you guys who are very well versed in the lore. And then talking about your thing about what you feel the Halo games are missing, like Halo CE and Halo CE and Halo 2's mission design. Something I feel 343 is starting to struggle with a lot is capturing the organic feel of Bungie's level design. Whenever Bungie designed levels, the outside areas were overwhelmingly large, and there was a lot of player space because Bungie was trying to make a big deal about, yeah, you're outside, because up until Halo Combat Evolved, first-person shooters mostly took place in very linear hallways. In fact, actually, that's one of the things that made Halo Combat Evolved so innovative, was how Bungie was able to seamlessly merge these wide outdoor spaces with tight, traditional shooter hallways. And sadly, with 343's level design, we saw it a little bit with Halo 4 and definitely with Halo 5. The indoor sequences are sadly just as linear as the outside, so overall, it doesn't shake up the gameplay in any way. I think of the first level of Halo 5 especially, that's a very big culprit. When you were outside, it was just as linear as when you were inside in caves or Forerunner structures. There was no freedom at all, and, you know, with Halo 5, as it kept going, obviously the levels got a little bit wider, but the sin was still there that when you're inside, it's just as wide as when you are outside. Some Sanghelios levels felt like that. I think of enemy lines. There's a sequence when you're in a tunnel or when you're walking through tunnels and Forerunner structures. It's honestly just as restrictive as being outside, and that's not a good thing. You know, you don't want being outside to feel like you're on a linear path. Halo 5, it's sad because there are a lot of outdoor sequences, like definitely Reunion. I didn't feel like I was in this lush, beautiful forest planet. I felt like I was in a hallway that was painted to look like a forest because it was so restrictive and linear and on rails. So I'm hoping that in the next Halo game, Halo 6, 343 kind of figures out how to balance the linear hallways and outdoor, wide, massive playable spaces a little bit better. Make the levels feel less linear and more organic. So I hope that answers your questions, dude. We're going to move on to Marco Rostovsky, who says, hey, I'm a new subscriber from Macedonia, and I really love your channel. Now for my questions. Number 1, do you think 343 should add more classic maps with newer graphics and not remix them in a completely different map that is nothing like the classic? Number 2, what is a classic map that you think they should bring back and that would work well with the Halo 5 mechanics? Personally, I think Foundry would be awesome, only if it's like in Halo 3 with all the blocks placed in Forge. Plus, it would be great as a map and a forging canvas. Number 3, Halo 5 as a game is great, but I feel like 343 are still learning what the community wants. After Halo 4 being too much like Call of Duty and the catastrophe of a game, the Master Chief Collection, I think Halo 5 is like a testing field for 343 with all the monthly updates. I think they're shaping Halo with the suggestions from the community, and Halo 6 should be just that. The game that we were waiting for from 343, and the game that will be Halo's comeback. Anyways, love your videos and keep up the amazing work. Well, thank you so much, dude. So for your first question, I think that 343, this is just my personal opinion, what I think 343 could actually do, which would be awesome, is make a classic playlist. No Spartan abilities, no nothing, just the classic gameplay without sprint, and if they wanted to, to save on resources and stuff, let the community make remakes of our fan favorite maps. I think of definitely the way Wyvern Zoo, or Wyvern, I think as people have been telling me it's pronounced, Wyvern Zoo, how she remade Sandtrap just perfectly. She made a complete remake of Sandtrap and stuff, and take all of these community submitted maps that are perfect recreations of classic maps and put them all into this classic playlist where we can play without Spartan abilities and stuff. And personally, I think that would be awesome. And then to go with your second question, what is a classic map that I think would work well with Halo 5's mechanics? I've actually thought about this before, and personally for me, I feel like Last Resort would work really well with Halo 5's mechanics, because Last Resort is a very vertical map, but because it's so vertical, it actually gives the team on the bottom a little bit of an advantage to make up for the fact that, the team on the top that has the high ground, they're obviously going to have the combat advantage. So with Halo 5, you think of Last Resort, there is a beach, and then up the beach, there is kind of like the bombed out base, and so one team spawns on the beach, one team spawns up the hill on the bombed out base. Now the team up on the bombed out hill, they've got the elevation, so they've got better use of their Spartan abilities, like ground pounding and stuff. Now if you were to give the team, put more power weapons on the bottom sections of the map and vehicles, that would kind of balance it out, and I think it would create some pretty fun engagements. What do you guys think? So with your final one about Halo 5, as time goes on, I definitely do feel that's what Halo 5 is. It's like a beta for the future of Halo, if that makes sense. Like with Halo 4, 343 came out swinging. They gave it their all. It was, I mean, you can commend them. You may not like the game, but they had everything you needed. They had the classic Halo modes that we know and love. They had even some new ones like Dominion and stuff, which sadly have not returned because I did like Dominion. They had your co-op mode, they had your campaign, and they had everything. They had Forge, custom games. And with Halo 5, it's like they've doubled back, because the problem is they put so much effort and resources into Halo 4, and the community was just like, don't like it, sucks, rest in peace Halo, you killed it. So it's like, oh, shit. Okay, we can't, put as many resources into this next Halo game, because what if they just reject it like the last one? That's a lot of wasted money and time. So with Halo 5, they've kind of put a little bit into the game, and they're slowly weaning back in content, very slowly, because they're testing the waters so that they don't just blow their load like they did with Halo 4 and have the community throw it back in their face and go, you suck, Bungie was better. And that's actually pretty sad, and it's pretty sad actually that the community was so venomous and toxic, because if you guys really think about it, in hindsight, Halo 4 was not this awful, terrible, just garbage game. It was a disappointing Halo game, but you can't deny the multiplayer was there for people that enjoyed it. There were all of your playlists that you could choose from. There was all of your customization options. You had your campaign. You had your side game mode that you could play with your friends and stuff. They gave us a lot, and the community basically said, hey, F you guys suck. And so, that's probably why Halo 5 is lacking so much. They don't want to put a lot of effort into the game and then have the community just reject it with venom like they did with Halo 4. So, I don't know. I want to hear some of you guys' feedback on that. And so we are going to close this week off with a question from Megaron, who says, hey, Late Night Gaming, do you also feel that Halo's story is going through what Star Wars went through with its prequels? Here's some examples. You get a solid and great first trilogy, like Halos 1 through 3 and Star Wars episodes 4 through 6. Then it's followed by a vastly lesser trilogy, Halo 4 and 5 and possibly 6, and Star Wars episodes 1 through 3. You've got a huge expanded universe with full of background lore, and the lesser trilogy explains the background mythos, Halo with the Forerunners and the Ancient Humans, and Star Wars with midichlorians being the Force. Oh god, reading that made me angry. And then you've got a shift in focus to mainly one demographic. With Halos 4 and 5, or actually no, definitely with Halo 5, it's more focused on competitive gaming, and Star Wars, it's more focused on children. What are your thoughts on this comparison? Bonus! The Halo 5 Wraith looks a lot like the droid tank from the prequel trilogy. Oh my god! You're right! I never thought about that. Whoa! I forgot what that droid tank was called. Isn't it called like an AAT? No, it's ATT. It doesn't matter. So to go over some of the things that you said, no, that's a spooky coincidence that you landed upon. It's very apparent. You had a solid and great, Halos 1 through 3 were all very good games. They're all classics. Same with the original Star Wars trilogy, and then you're followed by a much lesser trilogy. Now, here's where I'm going to disagree on one thing. Halo 4, I don't think that it's that bad of a game. I definitely don't think it's as bad as the Halo community claims it is. And if we're comparing Halo 4 to Star Wars Episode 1, no. Like, Halo 4 is... The campaign is beautiful for that game. The narrative and just the beauty of that campaign, like, no, it's not even close to Star Wars Episode 1, but, oh man, Halo 5's campaign, I would definitely put it on par with Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Very bad writing in both the game and the movie. And I'm hoping that Halo 6 isn't like Star Wars Episode 3, because that movie was bad as well. So, yeah, no, there is a lot of similarities, and it's funny because there are also a lot of real-world possible reasons for it. It's just a mishandling and just a complete lack of understanding of what these properties are. George Lucas had a ton of help making the original trilogy. In fact, it's actually debatable whether or not he's the quote-quote creator of Star Wars, as some people say he is, because a lot of the best contributions that made the original Star Wars trilogy work were not his ideas. And, Episode 5, which is arguably called the best Star Wars movie ever made and one of the best movies of all time, he had little to no input in that. And definitely... when it came to the original Star Wars trilogy, that was when George Lucas assumed complete control, and, well, the prequel trilogy of Star Wars movies sucked. They sucked so bad, because George Lucas, I don't think he really understands what Star Wars is, and the prequels were evidence of that. And for 343, I think it's a little bit less than, George Lucas, where he's just an incompetent child with creative control of one of the most important properties in history. I think 343 is a mixture of people that know what Halo is and a mixture of corporate suits that just want to sell games, and it's like a constant wrestle and argument between the two factions. And so, I don't know, we're going to see how Halo 6 pans out. Hopefully the community is vocal enough this time around and more direct. We can't just say it sucks, get rid of it. We have to be so damn specific this time, guys, about what worked and what didn't. Because with Halo 4, the community just said, sucks, get rid of it, rest in peace, Halo. And so look what we got, Halo 5. Instead of cracking down on what they did right and getting rid of what they did wrong, they panicked and rewrote everything, changed everything, because the community wasn't specific enough about what worked and what didn't. So they're just like, crud, change everything, we gotta try again. And to disastrous results, we get an arguably worse game than Halo 4 in terms of the campaign. So with Halo 6, guys, we need to be so damn specific about what works so well and what doesn't work. So I'm going to leave you guys with those few words, and thank you so much for all of your questions, guys. Leave your next set of questions down below, and I will see you all on the next one.